everybody. Welcome back to another amazing episode of Trading Fours. My name is Dan Gelok.
My name is Jordan Reed, and it's been a while. But,
it has.
but we're back, and lucky for us, we're not really on any sort of a time commitment because we're our own bosses when it comes to this show.
Yeah. So, and we're very grateful that everybody who listens to it does.
Yes.
And if we love you all very, very much, but apparently not enough to put out regular episodes. But yeah, today we've got a really super cool episode because I am going to be interviewing Jordan and Turner Matthews. It is Matthews, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And
do you know that Turner is his middle name? Do you want to know his real name before I bring him in?
Yeah, what is his real name?
David Matthews. Dave Matthews.
I'm so sorry. That's why he goes by Turner. Okay, so earlier when when Jordan and I were talking about this, I referred to Turner as Tucker, and I've been doing that in the back of my head for like weeks now, and I'd be telling my wife, yeah, so Jordan just sent me the thing, him and this guy Tucker, Turducken. Anyway, I wrote his name down so that I could remember that his name is actually Turner. But yeah, so Turner Matthews is going to be joining us. So there has been a recent release. Well, why don't we get Turner in here? And
yeah, let's do it.
We'll be able to start.
Okay, here we go. I'm bringing him in right now.
Awesome.
Let's see what happens. There's Turner. Hi,
All right.
Turner.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear us?
Totally.
I can.
Prove
Awesome.
it.
Hey, Turner, I'm Dan. It's really nice to meet you.
Hey, Dan, I'm Turner. It's nice to meet you.
So I've been listening to this album that you guys have just put out, and we gave a little bit of an introduction before you came on the show. But what's going to happen is basically I'm going to be asking a series of highly uncomfortable questions to both of you guys, and I hope we will have a link to the album so that you can stream it or release it. And what we have here, if our listeners have not experienced this album yet, is a full-length instrumental album by the MEMZ duo that I'm assuming I'm pronouncing right.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, it's not the MEMZ duo.
No memes here.
A lot of people
please tell me that that's where the name came from.
Actually, the name came from memories.
Really?
Yeah, we just shortened memories, and then we decided to make the E upside down because it looked cool.
It's fun. It's
but
fun that way.
I guess if you were to pronounce it phonetically, it's mums, which are a type of flower.
But that's not the right way to say it.
Just MEMZ. Memes is funny. You can also, say GIFs. You can say JPEGs. That's fine.
We'll stick with MEMZ so that people can actually find this album and talk about it. So you guys have been putting this together for how long now? Like, it was just released. Like, is it released now?
No.
Okay. I have an advanced copy of it, and I've been listening to it for the last couple of weeks. So when is it being released, and where can you find this thing?
Go ahead, Turner.
It'll be released on Friday, September 4th.
Okay. And
we're going to, that's a Bandcamp. Bandcamp's been doing the first Friday. Yeah. So we're going to release it on that day. And it'll be on Bandcamp, and that's where you can find it. And I believe it'll be $7 and you get the whole album and do all the streaming stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we have a very diverse crew that listens to this podcast thingy that we do, but this is a combination of it has influences of classical saxophone because that's what Jordan is good at.
Yes.
But it's also, we've also got, I would call it like, if I were going to genreify it, I would say I'd have to use the terms ambient and electronic, a little bit of minimalism in there. It's a really good product. It is unique. I've been listening to it a lot, and
thanks, Dan.
It's good quality stuff. Yeah. Did you do all of the, I got a series of questions here, and I don't even know where to start here, but like, can I ask you, the two of you, how did y'all start doing music together? What brought you to the point where you're producing such a high quality, like, it sounds authentic, like you spent a whole lot of money in a production studio with a lot of mastering and several hours of expensive mixing. But I'm assuming that you did the majority of it yourself. So how on earth did you guys make such a good product?
Turner did most of the work, so I'll let Turner answer that.
Okay.
Well, to your earlier question, we started everything back in March of last year, so 2019. I had a residency in Columbus through this place called the Fuse Factory, which is a non-for-profit kind of media arts education, and they do these experimental concerts. And I was doing them once a month, and I was collaborating with people. So one month I was like, "Hey, Jordan, do you want to come hang out with me and work on some stuff for a month, and we'll play it?" And we literally took a month, and once we were done, we were the 3 tracks on there that are the 3 movements of birdos is what happened after that month of us working on stuff. And we were like, dang, we vibe really well. Like, this is the music we both want to be making right now. Let's just like hit it really hard. And since then, we've been recording really consistently here in my home studio and a couple of odd spaces. But for the most part, the production side of things was all done here at my house using Ableton, a handful of mid-range microphones, and lots of watching YouTube videos on how to mix and master things. Because I'm a classically trained musician as well, and my background is in percussion and composition. And I always was doing electronic music this whole time, but the more production side of it, at least in the past few months, because I just released a solo album back in May, and that's really like what got me with like, dang, this is a deep rabbit hole. And so that what I learned there carried me through with the MEMZ album as well.
It's a whole unique like skill set, being able to, it's one thing to write some music, it's another thing to conceptualize how a final product is you want it to sound. It's a completely different thing to know how I get these sounds out. And yeah, rabbit hole sounds like the right word for it, but you've done it. I mean, Turner, you've done a terrific job. The mixing on this is absurd.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
So one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to make Jordan splice in a bunch of tracks for this. And so right now we're going to splice in a little bit of the very first track, which is First Steps. And we're going to make everybody listen to a couple of seconds of that. And then I'll ask you some questions. Is that cool?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. So here we go. This is a little sampling of First Steps. So, how on earth did you mix the saxophone in with the ambient sounds in the background, and how many instruments are actually playing? And you can like instrument writ large. What did we just hear?
Actually the first steps and the final steps are kind of they have the least amount of instruments. So the first steps, there's 2 saxophone parts,
okay,
which are kind of those similar, like blah, blah, like kind of like tones coming out. So there's 2 of those on top of each other with like a little bit of reverb and a little bit of delay. And then the other tracks are, one of them is an instrument that I made that's just a chord stick. It's just some strings over a guitar pickup. and I use an EBow on it and a glass slide, so it gives me all these like synthy kind of like like with the chords kind of sliding around, and then there's this kind of like glassy sound in the background, which is me rolling on this copper glockenspiel, which is actually sitting right back here.
That guy
it's just some real soft mallets, and then I reverbed that out, so it just kind of becomes this drone, and that's pretty much. Am I missing any tracks, Jordan, do you think?
I don't think you are. No, it sounds like there's way too much going on, but that one, yeah, I think there's like 4 things.
I wanted to start with this one because like the first so it's really cool because like the album is bookended by the first steps and the final steps. And they're obviously very related tracks, and there's a very unique flow to the album, which is pretty cool. But it's bookended by these two, and they are the most like consistent, like. It sounds like they're the most basic version of what you guys are doing, but there is a distinct sound that carries throughout the entire album. And there's much more activity on the inside of it.
Yeah.
You'll have all the ambient background noise. You are creating a soundscape that is complete using only the tracks you have at the very beginning of it. So, and I couldn't tell by listening. I'm like, is this a key? Is it a guitar? Is it Ableton or like something that you put together with Mac or something like that?
Yeah.
But so how much so if I could access the composer side of your brain, how much instrument creation are you doing? Like how many instruments are you just creating in order to get a sound that you like? And do you end up putting something together? You decide, I don't like that sound, or I'm going to come back to that later, maybe not on this project. Like, what is that process for you?
Well, there's like a couple. Do you mean instrument creating in terms of like digital instruments or like a physical new instrument?
I mean both. Like, so in case of this, you decided, I'm sure that we have a saxophone as like sort of like the core melodic, if you want to call it, motif, and then you were creating some texture for it, some background, things that provided a context, and instead of just getting a guitar and hitting a chord and turning the reverb way up. You've decided to use an EBow on an electric guitar-ish thing that you described.
I actually have it back here. I can
bring it up.
I also want to point out that Turner and I are both wearing hats, and we're both wearing shirts with skeletons on them, and I think that's very cute.
Nice. I am wearing neither of those things.
It's like literally the most simple, like just some strings over a guitar pickup. Sorry, were you all chatting about something?
No, he was just at outfit coordination.
Oh, nice. Black shirt
with skeletons and a hat, and
but I think that I really try not to lean on too many digital sounds. I really like augmenting acoustic sounds or making acoustic sounds in a way that they sound synthesized. Like the EBow with the slide sounds really synthy, and it's just a really simple 4-part harmony. A lot of the things where I'm actually using, I really like at the final steps, the tail end of that has these like little bleeps and bloops that we really liked, and it was this little thumb piano thing that I've made. It's an electric kalimba.
I'm waiting for a cat to fall down. Oh, there we go.
My cat, it has been bugging me, but it's just like this.
Yeah.
This little electric kalimba, and you can plug in your guitar to it. But I recorded some samples of it, and then I fed it through a sampler on Ableton, and you can just like hold down these chords and it'll play through the sampler. So I'm combining electronic effects as well.
Gotcha.
So it's a real melding of trying to blur what is acoustic sound, was electronic sound. And for me, I really like it to sound really organic. And I think that's why the saxophone and the way that Jordan plays it, it blends really well with those sounds in a weird way. And it was weird because it is a very strange instrument to focus on as far as like the kind of record that we were making. I don't think a lot of people like, it's like saxophone is in every track, you know, but how well and organically it mixes with all of these electronic effects, and really like I do very little to Jordan other than like if there's a space that I've created with reverb or something like that to try and fit him inside of it, so it doesn't sound like, you know, he's in this like super isolated area and then like everything else is dreamy. I want it to sound like it fits in this environment. But really I do very little.
Well, I'd say that like there's a few things that I would guess contribute to it. One is like, I mean, the mixing is quite good. I've recorded saxophone many times very unsuccessfully, and it's real easy for the thing to stick out like a sore thumb. So you're using it like, you know, in an orchestration sense.
Yeah.
You know, in a good way. The other thing, I mean, Jordan, there's a question for you. I assume that a lot of the saxophone idiomatic stuff were coming from your creative brain. Some of the texture things and some of just the way that like grace notes will work. The use of altissimo is excellent in some of these things.
Thanks, man.
Actually, can we listen to the center of birdos, please?
Yeah, the second movement or the third movement?
I have been recently, I think it's in the second, it's the high stuff.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
We're going to listen to Jordan embarrass himself. Here we go.
Bloop.
So honestly, okay, so Birdos was released, what, like 6 months ago as a separate EP?
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and that was the first time that I was listening to it. And I'd heard Jordan play like before this, but like, I was like, I had it on in the background. I'm like, yeah, this is real cool. And then I like stopped and I was listening and I'm going, holy crap, this is really good playing. And it's the altissimo's good. I mean, it's up there. I mean, we got like B's, C's.
I think the highest sustained pitch is a C. Yeah.
Is that, I mean, you've got altissimo in the fourth track as well, around 40 seconds in. Is that, and that's, what's the track name? I'm never looking at it.
Hexinky?
Heck and some.
Yeah.
Yeah, some Alias, yeah.
Yeah, that is, like, how high up is that?
I think that one's around anywhere between A and C.
Okay. Yeah, so the thing about this stuff is that it's high, but we're getting a really sweet timbre, and it doesn't stick out as, hey, look at me, look at all the high stuff, which this will be a great way to actually transition into this question. Here's the thing. Modern composition frequently, modern saxophone frequently falls into the camp of, hey, look at this, look at what I can do with this. And so like a lot of modern composers will fall into the trap of innovation for just novelty's sake.
Yeah.
And the same thing with saxophone music. A lot of times it'll be, listen to how fast I can play this, listen to how high I can play this. The high playing is extremely tasteful and it's extremely comfortable and it's in tune. And it's like, I mean, holy crap. And I was like listening to it. And the thing that made me stop and listen is like, I was like, it wasn't like, oh, listen to the altissimo. I was like, wait, that's really, really tasteful. And that's above the natural range of the horn. And so you're able to write it into the parts in a way that sounds natural and not gimmicky. And Turner, for you as well, it's like a lot of the compositional elements of this stuff. With this album, you seem to have broken out of a classical thing. We're all classical musicians here. We're classically trained. And I think we know how easy it is to get stuck in academic settings. How did you do that? How did you get outside? Because this is not a classical album.
Yeah. And to be quite honest, like that's kind of, once I was done with graduate school, I kind of had, I when I was younger, I always thought I was going to be a songwriter. So there was this part of me, once I got done with kind of my more academic training, was that I really wanted to work on writing songs. So, and kind of combine both worlds in a way. So my residency that I mentioned earlier was this way for me to be more experimental, and do the more kind of avant-garde things that I was interested in. But then I was also working on recording like an album of songs. And kind of as I go along, I think, have you heard of So Percussion before?
Yes, I have.
So right before I started that residency, I reached out to him, kind of just like to have a little mentor sesh. And I was like, oh, I'm interested in like formal composition and writing for wind band. But I'm also really interested in like writing songs. And I'm also, there's all these things I was interested in. And he kind of summed it up really nicely, being like, these, as musicians, we like to make these boxes for ourselves. Like, this is my classical playing, this is my non-classical playing, this is my experimental. And like, it is more of a holistic thing that contributes to our entire creative self. So if you think of someone like Bryce Dessner, who like is like, is international.
Yeah, who just wrote a Taylor Swift album. No, seriously.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. He's a monster.
Yeah, he is. He's a beast.
But and Jason is friends with him, but it's this kind of like, we don't need to limit ourselves if we're interested in doing something to just kind of do it. But that's in college and stuff, I always played in like rock bands and stuff like that too, around a similar vein of this like droney kind of harder. We were a little harder, but I think I've always been interested in doing kind of things more down pop music or kind of electronic music veins as well.
Sure. Jordan, did it feel like, were there moments of fear or just sort of anxiety about stepping outside of the established classical realm for producing something like this?
For me, this is actually like the most refreshing thing I've done. I think it's because at the end of the day, like, I love creating and I love making up stuff. And I love using the foundation I've built of practicing fundamentals all the time and playing rep and, jumping through all the necessary hoops. I love using that stuff and putting it in a context that is new or refreshing or maybe like a little bit boundary pushing without being, like you were saying earlier, gimmicky or showy offy. Like,
it's not showy offy at all. And that's the thing that's amazing about it, is that everything and like when I stopped and I was like actively listening, I was like, this is really tasteful and it's well executed, but the point of it isn't the execution.
And that's really, that means a lot. And because that's something that I always worry about, because I think, at least from a saxophonist perspective, we've all been, or the majority of the people watching have been to a NASA conference or a Navy band or something, where everyone's goal in the vendor room is just to play super loud and super high. And it's a way to flaunt, but it's like so uncontextualized and it really makes no difference. And it's just very weird. So
it's
like
horrible.
it's horrible. And like, how are you going to test a P Marriott against the Yamaha just by playing super high A's and C's? It doesn't make any sense. So for me, I practice altissimo, and I've been practicing altissimo so much to where I don't think about it anymore as an extended range. I think about it as a necessary component of playing your instrument. So, yeah. And I also like when those, I never like went into a writing session or a recording session, because most everything on the album is, if not 60-40, it's 50-50 between Turner and I, except for the last full track, which that one's all Turner and it's my favorite. But like, I never went into an idea session, I guess is what we're all going through all the time as humans. I never went into one as like thinking, okay, well, I need to play really high and then I need to do this or that. I think that the way that the stuff was going and it was happening organically just kind of lended itself well. And because there aren't vocals. There are vocalese, but there really aren't any vocals on it. I was like, well, if there's nothing that's sort of cutting above the texture, because we also didn't want like, I don't think it was a conscious decision, but I think, you know, Turner being way more of a composer than I am, but then us just both actively listening all the time, we didn't really want the texture just to be super narrow and thin, except for like the beginning of Ocean 1, Ocean 2 is pretty narrow, but I don't know. It's all textural and it was all designed to, like, everything serves a purpose. Everything has a meaning and is there intentionally, even though a lot of it was made up on the day we were recording. Everything is still intentional.
So, what would what's the compositional method here? How are we putting things together? How are we deciding harmony and form and dissonance and chord progressions?
At least, okay, so songwriting, and then I want to touch on chord progression. So songwriting, the first thing Turner and I wrote together was remote, and it was the first movement ARPs of Birdos. Turner asked me to send him some ideas. So I sent him some really simple ideas, one of which was me whistling and sounding like a bird on a crappy microphone. And then the other
which
one
is,
was...
just to jump in, is very impressive how good of a whistler Jordan is. Like, you're getting like, you can like do multiphonic kind of like hum whistle stuff. Anyway.
So I knew Turner liked the whistling, but now I know Turner really likes the whistling.
Loves the whistling.
Love a good whistle. But then I sent Turner a series of low Ds, tongued, around here at the 16th note, but like approximated. But I left the octave key off, so I was getting some other stuff. And then low Cs and then low B flats.
Yeah. And
then from there, then Turner took it and then wrote a part. So like, it's a lot of passing back and forth of like building a skeleton. You know, I sent Turner a couple of femurs, and then Turner sent back a spine and a rib cage. And then maybe together, while we're in the same room, we like assemble more parts of a skeleton. So that's basically how we write music. Is here's an idea. Does it go anywhere? Does it have any legs? Does it mean anything? And then as far as chord progressions go, a lot of the stuff, again, was back and forth, and we're following harmonies that are super easy to hear. They're really easy to understand. And I think that they're like really emotionally gratifying, because I know that Turner and I are huge fans of what we lovingly refer to as sad boy music, or just sad person music. So like borrowing a little bit from there, the most, I guess, the most composed chord progression is at the end of, or like the big
track.
B section, of Some Alias. And that one we actually borrowed. The reason why that tune is called Some Alias is because we manipulated Sibelius's last name, because we borrowed some of the a chord progression that he used.
It's all like thirds moving, or like the chord movements of thirds from like a C to an A flat to a, but like mode mixture in there as well.
In the bootleg version that I have, I've got a track 4 and 5 are stuck together.
Yeah.
That's and you're talking about the stuff that's like towards the end of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's gorgeous. Like, that's really. Okay, you got a few high points, in my opinion, on the album. One of them is in Birdos. One of them is right in there. Actually, can we listen to that? Let's listen to a chunk from Some Alias.
Yep. Bleep.
Okay, so in here we get this super cool minimalist thing that happens that starts it off and it pushes it forward. Are there like saxophones very quietly recorded in here? Because I can't tell if it's a saxophone or if it's something else that's digitally affected.
Go ahead, Turner.
That's one of my favorite parts is like right at because Helsinki and Alias butt against each other, and right at the transition to Alias is the entrance of that bump, 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 chicka bump. And that's all saxophone, like at pitch, and then one an octave lower, and I have this like sub booster on it, so you get all these really low chunky sounds. And just to go into the production side of it a little bit, the way that I recorded Jordan is I had 2 condenser microphones kind of at a stereo setup right in front of him, and then I had a SM57 kind of off to the side, pointed at kind of like the lower openings, like where the low notes
right
come
at
out
the bow.
I'm glad that you're paying attention to that, because like if anybody's listening and hasn't ever tried to record a saxophone, the problem is that the sound comes out in different places depending on which note you play. So you can't just stick a microphone on the bell. I mean, you can, but it's not going to be right all the time. So you've got multiple mics going around to catch it at different regions.
Yeah. So you could get these like the clicks that he does. It becomes this integrated part of it. But there's a lot of like really hidden in some Alias. There's this that like da, 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 like you can hear this like vocal thing that's kind of chopped up and gated. But then there's a couple tracks of Jordan like alternating like like on saxophone, like super staccato, and those two blend with each other, and then it kind of becomes its own like meta instrument inside of it moving forward, where you kind of forget that it's 2 different things. So there are some blending happening.
This is like the concept of orchestration in like traditional compositions. Like if you look at Tchaikovsky or Ravel or any of the great orchestrators, they know that if you've got the clarinet in this range and then you blend it with the bassoon, or if you take the horn and the bassoon and you put those in octaves, you're going to get a sound that really works well together. It's like, it's like cooking, you add a couple of flavors together and that just for some reason works really, really, really well. And, you don't put, this wine with this meat because it doesn't work so well, but the white wine does work better with this. There's, I'd actually at some point I'd asked a friend of mine who's the head of composition at U of H. I'm like, why don't you guys teach orchestration anymore? And he's like, well, I'd like to think that we do. I mean, he was, and the thing was, I was commenting on like, there's not a lot of call in modern composition for trying to blend together traditional instruments in an orchestral setting in usual ways. But what you're talking about right now, blending these sounds, is that technique applied to 21st century sounds. It's just the same stuff in a new context, and it's really super cool.
Totally.
Speaking of super cool, what is this 3 against 4 against 11 thing that happens? The dot 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 dot, and there's like an 11 note like pattern that reproduces.
Oh, that bump 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 bump.
Yeah,
bump,
that's it.
Bump,
that's it.
Bump bump bump.
Yeah.
Bump.
It's like every 3/8 notes or every 3/16 notes, depending on how you're thinking of it. And then it's an 11 note pattern that just milks itself underneath this just driving thing. That's like a good 30 seconds before like the beat actually drops.
Yeah.
That's tasty.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. I think that like being able to have those, like, it's like, yes, it's a cool part and it's like super heady, and it's like something as musicians we're like we gobble it up because we can like do like more like technical analysis, or like we're like, oh dang, that's how did they do that, but at the end of it, kind of what Jordan was saying, I write very intuitively, and it's like I want it to like feel good, like that gratification of like the beat dropping and it going into that like really groovy part where Jordan plays all the altissimo stuff. I think it just like has, at a certain point, like you can, if you're writing something, it's like who are you serving kind of a thing. And at the end of the day, it's like all I want it to do is like feel good. Like I think like a lot of composers, the musicians have like written themselves into a corner of being like, look at this like technical stuff, which is kind of what we were talking about earlier, but it has to be listenable. You know, it has to feel good. And I can write all the technical stuff I want and like execute it fine, and it can sound like, you know, like crap.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this on the show before, but like the idea of just remembering the audience when we're programming or writing stuff together. How do you know what the audience wants? How do you know that what you're writing is cool or good?
I guess you don't. And I think a lot of it is like, I know that largely I think that if you're writing music, that your intent is for a larger audience to listen, because, you know, at least when I think, oh, a duo with saxophone and guitar, I think, okay, this is maybe reserved for a recital, a master class. And I already have all these preconceived notions of what I think it will sound like or whatever. So I think in that case, we think certain musics are written for certain things. But I know in this case, we wanted to write music that hopefully people would like because we like it. Mm-hmm. And I think it honestly helps when your target audience is everybody, as opposed to people in a performance hall or something like,
or people that may grant you tenure or not.
Exactly. So like it's I think like looking at, as a listener, there's a lot of trust that goes into if you've been following a specific artist or not. When they release a new album, it's like you were saying earlier, Dan, about food. It's like going to a restaurant and being there just for a tasting menu where you're getting dish after dish after dish. And you're just like, I'm here for the tasting menu. Here's way too much money. Just feed me whatever you want, because I'm trusting you to show me where you are right now, where you are as an artist, where you are as a cook, your skills. Maybe I can notice your background, perhaps. So I think we don't know if it's good or bad. I think it's just a matter of, we hope it is, and we liked it.
I think too, I had this like deep craving to make music that I would want to listen to. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really funny that a lot of like people who are in classical music and like do it as like a legit career and have this like, it's almost like this alter ego of like, oh, I play all this classical music, but also like I love listening to pop music, or I'm like really into like, and it's like, it doesn't have to be this like completely, you know, separate deal that's going on. And like, you know, obviously there's a lot of weight and like historical things of like how we prioritize what music gets noticed and what doesn't, and like especially in kind of a conservatory setting, whether or not like your school is a conservatory, if you're studying classical music, it's probably in that style of like the education, but like it can be a part of the conversation, and like you don't have to be afraid to be like, oh, like I love this kind of music too, and like I incorporate these styles into my playing. Yeah,
there's an accumulation that everybody goes through where they're developing a sense of taste, and a lot goes into that, you know. And when you're creating something, some of it I'm not sure is entirely within our control. We produce things that are in accordance with our sense of taste, and I think if we do things that are not, we really like recoil against it, because if you don't want to write Mozart and somebody's making you write Mozart, I'm sure you could do it, but you're not going to enjoy it so much. I mean,
No.
if it's not in alignment of what you're trying to do. With that in mind, what would either of you say are direct influences on this particular piece of work?
Okay, for me, I have a few. Olafur Arnolds is one, and it's huge, because like Turner was saying, like, why make your sources of inspiration exclusive depending on your performance venue or your audience? That's someone who does not. Olafur Arnolds can write some of the most like heart-wrenchingly beautiful, simple, just solo piano music. But then he can also make essentially like a couple of pop tunes with the chamber orchestra, and it just sounds so good. And it's like, oh, well, I can tell who you're influenced by, but you're using your knowledge and your skill and your education to create an amalgam of all the things that you like. Because if you're playing music and it's all the stuff you like balled into one, then you're gonna like playing it even more. So Olafur Arnolds is huge for me. The singer-songwriter S. Carey was also huge. My wife helped me realize that low roar was a really big influence. Around the time that we were writing the album, we were playing the new Hideo Kojima game, Death Stranding.
Yeah.
And in Death Stranding, it's so neat because it's set in the future, but the soundtrack when you're walking to a particular point A or point B is low roar. And it's really fitting because the scenery looks like Iceland or New Zealand, and it's rocky and mossy. Sufjan Stevens was a huge influence. Radiohead will always be an influence.
Yeah.
Black Star by Bowie, that album in particular was a big influence for me as well. I think that's basically it for me, at least.
You introduced me to Olafur Arnolds a while ago, and yeah, I'm going to go ahead and agree with literally everything you said. Did you know that he wrote the soundtrack to Broadchurch?
No.
BBC series? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, he did. He's done like television soundtracky stuff.
That's so cool.
How about for yourself, Turner?
A lot of what Jordan said, and I hadn't listened to him until you were like, I really like this track, and you were sending me stuff. So that was like definitely in my ear. But like Radiohead is a big influence for me. A lot of minimalist composers, but I kind of recently have like been listening to a lot of Sufjan Stevens. But then also I'll listen to Godspeed You Black Emperor and like Explosions in the Sky. And then I'll like be like, what if like Godspeed and Explosions in the Sky like
had a baby,
met up? Yeah, like had this love child where it's like dark and moody without it being so like, because Godspeed is like apocalyptic. It can be really beautiful, but like it is, the moments of beauty are surrounded by this like complete, like really dark, heavy stuff. And to this day, like Godspeed is my favorite live concert that I've ever seen. I saw them when they played Big Ears in Knoxville a couple of years ago. And like, it was just so impactful of like, and they have so many musicians on stage and like how they combine the timbres and like how they use things like guitar reverb and to make these drones not as just these like noisemakers, but they're really thoughtful with how they use, you know, if you think of distortion, a lot of people are like, oh, it's messy, it's meant to be messy and like kind of rebellious in that way, but they really like are thoughtful how they use their reverb and how they use their feedback from their guitars and stuff. I for some reason those things have been a big influence on me as well.
That's cool. So let's see here, a few more questions. How did you decide on the track ordering?
That was kind of a last minute thing. Really? Like we wanted an intro and an outro, and then we were realizing, like, what was it, Turner, like 2 months ago, that everything was like way more programmatic than we thought it was.
Yeah.
So then we just aligned them that way, and we're like, okay, what tracks seem like they make the most sense if you're following a particular character's, I don't know, journey, I guess.
Yeah.
And then that's really it. Then the tracks kind of just, in a way, I don't like when people say like, oh, they just the music did it itself. It's, you know, we were still in control of it, but it was like there was definitely a right and a wrong way to organize them based on leaving somewhere, first steps, coming back, last steps. It just kind of followed a natural trajectory.
I mean, the second to last track, Compass and Polaris, had to be there. I
think so too.
There's nowhere else you could have put it. Birdos is probably, I love Birdos. Like that's the tracks 4 through 9 are my favorite part of the album. I think that's like some of the serious, like the beefiest like writing that we have. But 9 is the climax of the album. It fits exactly where it's at.
It's kind of funny. It was the last thing that was written, and we kind of were like, we want this last track. We knew we wanted one more thing. We want it to be really simple. I like felt really weird. I did a bunch of writing to Jordan, and Jordan was like, "This is awesome. Like it needs to be like as true to this original form."
Yeah. Strangely enough, that's how Comfortably Numb was written.
That's so cool.
With the Pink Floyd tune, they were like, "We need something else. We need another thing." And then they wrote what's arguably one of the best tracks on the wall, but whatever. Okay, so I got to ask this. So Birdos is a standalone 3-movement suite that we've released, previous to the upcoming album. Was there any connection with the are you familiar with Maria Schneider's Sky Blue album at all?
Yes, but I also haven't listened to Maria Schneider in way too long, but I love Maria Schneider.
Okay, so her second to last track on that album, Cerulean Skies, is a 20-minute tone poem about birds.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, and these are not the same tracks or anything close to each other, but you have I couldn't help but think of the connection between those two things. It's that's a terrific track. It's about, the same length, and it's the same subject matter, which is really cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I didn't know if that had been intentional in any way, but
no.
Okay.
I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to listen to
it. Yeah, it's great. I had to ask. How about the names of the tracks?
Go ahead, Turner. Why don't you take this?
Yeah, I think that since the beginning, because we were so silly with MEMZ and that we wanted to I don't know. It's fun to kind of be silly, but then it kind of emerged to I think we. And then a 6 or 7 scientists one popped up.
6 or 7 scientists stumble upon a spaceship? Is that?
And eventually we had the titles of all of them except for the first couple and the last couple. And then when we decided that it felt like it had this narrative, because First Steps and Last Steps was just going to be intro and outro. Mm-hmm. But then we were like, this kind of, the album's called Music for Exploring, which we already had the name for. And we were like, dang, everything is it's about movement. It's about finding your way to a place. The titles kind of fit in that theme accidentally. And then kind of the last ones, we were like, okay. And especially Polaris and Compass, we were playing around with the idea of going home, and then Jordan was talking about some Latin words that meant nostalgia, which is kind of writing the album kind of feels nostalgic in a weird, like the music feels nostalgic, and we wanted something that felt like that. So we decided to search to change it from some Latin things to more of like, you know, common words that people can like look at and like, you know, have their own interpretation. And it's not just like nonsense of like the Polaris and the compass of like finding, like aligning these things and like finding your way.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So one final question. There's a lot of moods that it goes through. There's a lot of tension. There's a lot of release. I mean, it's a meaningful album, but it's also like just evocatively, I feel it's rather hopeful.
Yeah.
How do you feel about releasing a hopeful album right in the middle of one of the hardest periods of any American's lives?
I know, like, just speaking for me, like, it's almost like a personal release because, you know, what's happening globally, what's happening locally, what's happening in education, what's happening with everything being very, very divisive. It's everything like kind of sucks a little bit, you know? So I think for us, this is a way for us to take a breath of fresh air and just maybe release something that, like, who knows, like maybe somebody could really benefit from hearing something like one of the tracks. I know that I've really benefited from working on this album. It's helped me emotionally. It's helped me, I mean, not really physically, but emotionally, it's helped me a lot. So I don't know. It also feels like, who was it? I forget who it was. It was not me because I'm not this smart or thoughtful. It was when things like really suck, artists seem to put out a ton of work because I think that frustration and anger can really help inspire, or not inspire, fuel artists. And I think that, you know, whatever art you're making, whether it's dance, physical art, painting, music, photography, whatever, you have an Etsy shop, who knows? I think that this sort of stuff helps fuel art and fuel momentum and change and maybe like positivity or glimmers of hope. So, you know, I don't know if it's like there's never really like a good or a bad time to get a dog. I don't know if there's like a great time to ever put out something you've been working on or any sort of art or an album. But I think for us, it just kind of feels like a good time to do it because it's helped at least me take my mind off of like a lot of stuff. So I don't know. That's my I don't know, not super intelligent answer.
How about you, Turner?
I kind of have a thought here, and I might just follow it as we're talking about it, because I've been thinking a lot about being an artist, and kind of there's the trope of like you kind of like what Jordan was saying with the, you know, when things are hard, artists seem to be making the most. And how I feel is like definitely we're taking advantage of the time that we have, and but also kind of spending so much time on something that is kind of more of a passion project for both Jordan and I, is kind of being able to step back from things for a little bit and like, you know, spend some more time like talking to your friends or your family is a part of the creative process. And like beyond like Jordan and I being collaborators, we're also like good friends, and like it like helped us kind of like, I don't know, it's hard to communicate with people even when we have technology. And I know when we were first working on the album, it was like awesome. Like when he would come over and record with in my studio, it's like, not only were we like hanging out and joking around, but also like we're doing things that we loved. So like finding this balance of like taking the rest that you need and appreciating the rest, because especially like right now I have a lot of downtime and a lot of like time to be restful and do things that I enjoy doing, but also kind of this other like extreme side of like, I can also just like barrel down and like really focus on this and realizing, you know, on the flip side of once everything, once people are healthy and able to go back to not being so remote, that they can come through their experience, maybe being isolated, but also realizing that they had maybe more time to themselves and more time to be thoughtful and reflect. And this album, I think, is a lot of reflection for me. Like, a lot of the tracks like allowed me to be more reflective, and that's why it feels hopeful to me that, you know, that you can come away from this experience having some new tools in your belt to kind of just be a happier person and prioritize your time differently, or realize what you really want to be doing with your time. I don't know if that made any sense of like at all.
Well, it's a very on the spot question, so it did. No, it did. It just makes me wonder if we could get everybody to, you know, I don't know, paint for 45 minutes a day, if America might not be a better country. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, well, gentlemen, this was great. We're getting close to the end of our time. I'm jealous because this album is great, and if I had made it, I would be incredibly proud of it. So
thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah.
I hope it does extremely well. I'm going to be promoting it as much as I can, and yeah, hopefully a lot of people are going to be able to enjoy it as much as I have. So bravo to both of you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you so much for having us on. Yeah.
Is there anything else we should say where people should find you or connect with you?
I'll put a little thing in the description. But if you're looking for the album, it officially releases. This video will be out before it for sure. It releases Friday, September 4th, which is a Bandcamp day. You can go to memzduo.com, MEMZduo.com. It'll take you right to the Bandcamp. And
we also have an Instagram that's MEMZ Duo. So if you just follow us on that, like, you'll get all the updates and see. We'll have media blasts once things are released.
Oh, and also in the future, we're going to be releasing, I think around a month when this one comes out, we're going to be releasing an album of remixes that a bunch of our other artists and buddies have done as well. So it'll be like anywhere from like 7 to like 10 tracks of music for exploring remixes.
Whoa.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we sent out all the stems. And right now we have a giant Slack going on between all these musicians, coordinating the stems, and people are already working. We've got anything ranging from like bedroom pop to like hip hop to someone taking the stems and bouncing them to a tape deck and then slowing down the tapes and like re-recording it. You know, we have the remixes will be broad, which is exciting.
Awesome. I can't wait for that. That's going to be amazing.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, cool. Well, gentlemen, thank you again so much.
Thanks,
for being
Dan.
on. I'm not thanking you, Jordan. This is your show.
That's
so,
fine.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Thank you, Turner.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for. I don't know how to play saxophone. I've played one once. So.
Okay. Well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've given us a good context in which some saxophone may be played. So you're one of us now. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's like a rash that you're never going to get rid of from here on out. So
I'm into it.
yeah. All right, cool. I think that does it for us. So everybody, if you've been listening, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you at the next episode whenever we see you.
Bye.
Bye.